Everybody, this is the Longhorn Confidential for Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. I'm Danny Davis, the American-Statesman, joined by Thomas Jones, joined by David Eckert. Let's get right into it. Normally, with these Longhorn Confidentials each week, I have a little script that I send out to David and Thomas, Cedric when he's here about what we're going to talk about. But, about an hour ago, I decided to throw these guys a little bit of a curveball and at least start off with something different. Then we'll get back to this award-winning script. But there's a little discourse going on Twitter today about the AP poll, and I guess this also includes the coaches poll. But Texas is ranked seventh in both. But the discussion around the AP poll is generally why is it in existence? Who votes in it? Should certain sports writers be voting on it? Y'all can look up exactly what the discourse is. We don't need to throw anyone under the bus because I definitely feel the plight of this journalist who's kind of being ripped online today. But Eck, we'll start with you. I'm a former AP voter. We can get into that in a second. But Eck, what are your thoughts on just the AP poll, the coaches poll as well? Steve Sarkisian has talked about this. Does it need to exist in 2025, or are there better ways to judge who the best teams are in the country?
No, it's extremely useless for so many different reasons. But yeah, so just as a summary, right? The AP poll, Associated Press Top 25, is journalists vote on it. And mostly journalists who cover a specific school, right? Like Danny, Thomas, and I, we cover Texas. We don't cover Texas A&M, we don't cover whatever. So to me, when you're sitting down and you're working a Texas game as a beat reporter, that's probably an endeavor that's going to last 10 hours, right? Like you are going to be unavailable for that TV window and probably the TV window afterward if you'd like to watch college football. Okay. So we're doing our jobs, we're working. How are we supposed to go and watch and have nuanced opinions about other programs that are in the top 25 when we go, on Sunday and early Sunday morning to fill out our ballots? It's a waste of time. The coaches poll is similar. Like, if you think that the SIDs for the sports information people for every coach aren't the ones filling out that poll, like, sorry, that's just what's happening. So I don't know. I just don't think either of them have any value in the year 2025.
Do you have any thoughts on the polls in 2025?
Be honest, not much. I think, like a lot of things, it's something journalists think a lot about, whether it's done or not. And I think most fans don't care that much. I think it's for entertainment purposes only. And there's no way, like David said, I'm 10 hours of Texas on Saturdays. I don't get watch a lot of college football. So who am I to vote? I didn't see Oregon beat up on Okie State. I don't know. So yeah, it's kind of silly, but in a perfect world, one of these days in college football, there'll be some divisions within conferences where a division winner qualifies for the playoffs, and polls will be completely irrelevant when it comes to playoff selections. Um, Man, I wish that day was here already because yeah, polls are kind of silly.
I will disagree with the assessment that fans don't care. As someone who used to vote in these polls, I can tell you that fans do care when you don't vote for their team. And
Yeah,
one of the reasons this is a conversation is because some fans took some umbrage with how Florida was voted on this week and were going after a reporter for that. So I do think fans care, but you're right, it is entertainment. It doesn't matter. It's 2025. I think Steve made this point earlier. This isn't the BCS era. This isn't an era where like the polls factored in who the national champion is. There's college football playoff rankings. That's the poll that matters. And those the people who vote on that, the committee that votes on that, their job is to look at every team and every game that they play and kind of make their decisions based off that. But just going back to when I had a AP vote for women's basketball, which I gave up a year ago. Well, I was forced to give up. My company no longer wanted me to vote on it. It's as hard as Dave was mentioning. I mean, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a University of Texas beat reporter, and those three jobs take up the majority of my time. I don't have time to look at how Notre Dame's doing and catch every single game and every single play. I don't have time to look at Oregon or Ohio State, and those are the good teams. And if you're filling out a good ballot, you probably need to be keeping up and paying attention with like 30 or 40 teams so you can know who the 20 to 25 teams are. And I think probably if you ask most AP voters, who's the leading rusher, who's the leading receiver, who's the top offense, who's the left tackle for any team on their ballot, most of the writers could not tell you the answers to that. And that yet they're voting for them as the 15th best team in the country. And I just think that is a silly exercise. It's an outdated experience. This isn't the 1970s anymore. But it's entertainment. It gives us something to write about. It's never going away. If the AP got rid of its poll tomorrow, someone else would supplement it and have their thing just because it's easy content and it gets people talking. And we've talked about it for about 10 minutes on this. But that was an interesting discussion on Twitter today. Still kind of calling it Twitter. We'll never call it X. Y'all can comment in the YouTube comments or our mentions with your opinions on that. But let's actually get to talking a little bit about Texas football. Texas is now 1-1 after a 38-7 win over San Jose State. It was a little closer in the first quarter than people expected, but Texas eventually pulled away in the second quarter, and it was kind of smooth sailing from then on out. But a lot of the discussion post game has been about two individuals, Ryan Wingo, Colin Simmons, and kind of their struggles this season. You can kind of lump DeAndre Moore into that conversation too. So we'll start with you, Thomas. Of the Longhorns that we expected to be big this year and still expect to have good seasons, who are you least concerned about of those guys who've kind of been off to a slow start this season?
Leave Colin, Simmons, and Wingo to you guys, but there's another guy who hasn't been great, and that's CJ Baxter. He's been good. Um, But I'm not worried about CJ Baxter at all. He's got 104 yards. He's averaging 4.5 yards a carry, which is it's not great for college football. He has 7 catches, averaging 3.1 yards per catch. That's really not good. But I'm watching him play, and he looks pretty quick considering he tore his knee about a year ago. I think CJ is going to get better and better and better almost on a weekly basis. And I think he's going to have 1,000-yard season. I think he's really one of those guys who hasn't been great, but I'm not worried about him at all from a Longhorns perspective. I think he's in for a big year as that ACL keeps healing. It's going to be fun to watch.
Speaking of ATLs, he did mention yesterday during his press availability that his girlfriend finally had her ACL surgery. For those who care about Texas softball and Mia Scott and everything that she did for that program, CJ said he couldn't watch too much football on Saturday night because he had to take care of the girlfriend, which is good because I'm sure she helped him out when he was going through his rehab process. Eck, who's your pick?
Yeah, I'm less concerned about Colin Simmons just because I think Colin Simmons, it depends on him, right? Ryan Wingo's performance depends on Ryan Wingo, but it also depends on his connection with Arch Manning. It depends on where Ryan Wingo stands in the hierarchy of Texas receivers, right? And if you're asking me right now, I would guess that Parker Livingston is going to be their number one guy this year, which is crazy, but I mean that's how it looks. So, I think Colin, he's just too talented to not get the production that we expect. He was talking about breaking the Texas sack record and all of this, but before the beginning of the season. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think he's going to be a really, really good defensive end for this team, and I can't really envision a scenario where that doesn't come out. I can envision it with Ryan Wingo, though, Danny.
You go with Ryan Wingo, and you can lump DeAndre Moore in this conversation too. I just think that eventually the talent will win out. And I think both of those receivers are very talented receivers. And yes, Parker Livingston has had a very good start to the season. But at some point, the opposing defensive coordinators are going to get some tape on him. And he is not breaking off an 83-yard touchdown against an SEC defense. I just don't see that happening. He only has 6 catches this year. I mean, he's made the most of those 6 catches, and he was really good in the Ohio State game. There's nothing taken away from him. But I think eventually, if he becomes the favored target of Arch Manning, that's going to catch some more attention, and that's going to, maybe open up some more opportunities for Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore, who, left the game on Saturday after being a little banged up. So I just don't think those two, who we expected a lot out of and kind of expect to be the next two big receivers in this Texas receiving core, I just don't think they're going to be silent the entire season. And if Parker Livingston is as good as he has been the first 2 weeks, that is a good thing for those two, because that means less attention for them, and defense coordinators are going to pick their poison between those three, and Arch is just going to get to pick whoever he wants, or if he wants to throw it over the middle to Jack Andrews, he can do that too. So I would just expect bigger things and brighter days for those two down the road. Steve has said both Ryan and Colin have been just pressing a little bit too much, and they both may be a little bit in their head as opposed to what the other teams are doing to them. But definitely slow starts, definitely kind of surprising outcomes for them against San Jose State, which is not a team that we'd rank in the AP poll if we had ballots, or if we thought that poll mattered. But like I said, Texas is now 1-1 this weekend. They will host UTEP at 3:15 over at DKR. That is an SEC network game if you're watching at home. This is only the seventh time that these two teams have played. They haven't played since 2020. That was the COVID year. Texas opened that season, I believe it was 59-3. If I recall correctly, if you fans recall correctly, first play of that game, Sam Ehlinger hit Joshua Moore for like an 80-yard touchdown pass, and it was off to the races after that. Obviously, not a lot of carryover from that team since it was in 2020. But TJ, we'll start with you, and we'll go around the room. What is one thing you've learned about the Miners as you started your scouting report and started writing your previews for the game?
They get after you on defense. Their defensive front and their front seven, they do a lot of creative things, a lot of blitzing, a lot of slanting, a lot of stunts. They lead the nation with 23 tackles for loss. They're second in sacks with 10. And this has been an issue for the Texas offensive line. They haven't done a great job handling these little stunts that teams are doing. So I think that could be a really fascinating matchup in the trenches. Because look, UTEP's got this kid Udoka Ezeani. He's from Missouri City, and if anybody knows about Mo City over in the Houston area, great athletes. And he's got what, 5.5 tackles for loss, pair of sacks already. He's about 215, 220-pound, lightning quick. Brandon Baker, the right tackle for Texas, Trevor Gooseby, the left tackle, the interior lineman for UT. They're going to have their hands full with Uziani and the UTEP front seven. That's going to be the matchup I'm most looking forward to watching Saturday.
How about you? What's the one thing you know about the Miners?
Yeah, same side of the ball is they defend the run pretty well. They're a top 30 team so far through 2 games in defending the run. They're under 3 yards per carry against. So, I mean, can Texas get that push? It doesn't sound like they're going to have Trey Wisner for this game based on what Steve Sarkisian said on Monday. He wouldn't rule him out, but I think he called him doubtful was the word he used. So, can CJ Baxter, Jarrett Gibson, can they get it going against a run defense that's been pretty good against not Power Five competition, granted. So take it with a grain of salt, but I'm interested to see whether they can get it going up front and establish the run, because that seems to be a real priority based on how Texas called plays the first 2 games.
That leaves the low-hanging fruit to me. But I was going to say about the defense, if no one talked about the defensive coordinator is a guy named by the name of Bobby Daly. And if you look on the UTEP website, they brag that he is one of the greatest linebackers in the history of Montana State University. And I would just like to note that during his time at Montana State, he went 1-3 against Montana. So don't know how great that defense was, but we'll see on Saturday. But Malachi Nelson, I mean, this
Mac
is
Talk.
this is I think the storyline of this weekend. This is a five-star kid who was in Arch Manning's class. He was the number 5 quarterback in that class. Arch was number 1. Unlike Arch is kind of the outlier in that class of five-star quarterbacks, because 2, 3, 4, and 5 in that class have all transferred. Malachi has transferred multiple times. Went to USC, did not get any playing time. Transferred to Boise State. Could not crack the starting lineup over there. He seems to have found a home in UTEP, has had a nice start to a season, over 400 passing yards, 5 touchdown passes. So this is probably talent-wise, this may be one of the better quarterbacks Texas has faced all season. They faced a 5-star in Julian Sayin at Ohio State to open the season. DJ Legway is coming up in a couple of weeks at Florida, but talent wise, if you believe in the star system and recruiting and all that stuff, Malachi is one of the better quarterbacks they're going to face. Obviously, he does not have these surrounding pieces that some of these other five stars have, but talent wise, he's good. The players on this team, a lot of them who were in that 23 class, like Anthony Hill and some of those guys, I mean, they've known about him for a while. So this should maybe be a better test than you'd expect from a UTEP team just because of what Malachi brings to this team. But it should still be a pretty easy Texas win. But that once again, that's 3:15 on Saturday over at DKR. We'll be there. You can read all of our stuff on statesman.com throughout the weekend. Sed and Kirk will be back on Thursday with their On Second Thought podcast. We'll be back later in this week. We're going to talk to Carter Yates over at Dave Campbell's Texas Football about UTEP. So if you want a more in-depth scouting report with a little bit less Bobby Daly talk, you can check that out later in the week. But I'll be here to remind everyone that he went 1-3 against Montana. But it is what it is. Go Grizz. But that's going to do it for us. We appreciate you listening to us wherever you get your podcast, watching us on YouTube or statesman.com. And we'll see y'all at DKR on Saturday. Deuces.